Everything is on.
Okay. Good morning. Time is 11:05. You are at a Wausau Waterworks Commission meeting, Council Chambers, City Hall, January 7th, 2025. And we have a quorum of members. We have all of our members here present today. First up is approval of our meeting minutes from December 3rd, 2024 meeting. I would entertain a motion. Motion from Jean, second from Robinson. Questions, comments, Mr. Jean?
I was still curious if we had a dead meter in 1970, when it was removed in 1973, because the minutes don't reflect anything, and I don't recall if there was any, if it was dead or not dead. Do you,
I'd have to look exactly at that one, Joe, but it was, we chased it because it was either came up on a blue sheet where it wasn't working or it was a zero use. So it was more than likely not reading, at least on the low end.
I'd still like to know.
Yep, I can get you
Because I
that.
thought initially it was what we called deduct meter, and we didn't own the deduct meter.
No, it wasn't a-
No, I figured that out.
Yeah.
Time-wise, that wouldn't be true.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Forrest?
In the minutes at the last meeting, we requested a complete rundown on the GAC system. Are we getting that today? I don't see it in the
We talked about doing that next month, Jim.
February. Oh, that's
February.
right. I'm sorry, this is January. My mistake.
All right, so that's clean.
Yep, no problem.
All right, seeing nothing further, all in favor of adopting the minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes. Item 2 is the director's report on utility operations. 4 items in there, fairly succinct. Questions or comments for Eric? Or Eric, you want to expound on any of these?
I don't think so specifically. If the commission has any questions on any of the items, please ask. We'll try to clarify.
I do, Mayor.
Mr. Forrest?
Item 1, the LSL funding, the 6.1 and the 8.9. We've been seeing a lot of coverage of that in the local press. Can you clarify for us what this looks like? Are we getting 6.1 for next year and then 8.9 for future years, or is it all coming next year?
No, I can give you my take on it, and
Thank
Eric
you.
can correct me if I'm wrong.
I would like that explained.
So there's 2 pieces to this. Well, actually, I think he's talking about the 2025 piece in here. So of that, the 8.9 is principal forgiveness for the private side, so our customer side, and a small portion of that for the city. But the 6.1 is the low-interest loan for the city's public side of the lead service line replacement.
Okay, well, and then the comments that I see, again, reading the local press, is the 6.1, where's the interest cost lie? That's with the 6.1, isn't it? Or is
Yes.
it? Okay, and how is that going to be covered? That seems to be the debatable issue.
Yeah, that is.
Whether that's going to be through ratepayers or through the city budget or some other source. Is there any clarification on that?
So there's some analysis still ongoing on that. If you recall from last year, the portion that was loans was all for the customer side, so that has to be general obligation piece. This piece for next year, since it's the city side, it could go in a combination of GO, it could go on the utility as a revenue bond, or it potentially could come in the form of a TID. We have a plan to bring that to the finance committee, the next finance committee, the 14th, I believe.
Yeah,
So
beginning the discussion on January 14th with recommendations and options coming on January 28th.
So what is the likelihood of any of these financial commitments for the 2025 LSL program falling on the ratepayers?
for that public side, or for that 6.1, the likelihood is reasonably high. I mean, it's allowable. The portion that is the principal forgiveness is for the customer side, so that they will not have any special assessments. So they'll be getting that at zero. But on the public side, it is allowable. It is yet to be determined because there's a few factors involved. We'll be working with bond counsel. We'll be working with Ellers to come up with the best strategy. Mary Ann's been working through some of those options. It's unfortunate that, we don't have a crystal ball on when these things roll out, but it will be hammered out here soon because we're going to want to close on these loans in probably February, March timeframe. And if we can have that plan put together, we'll present that through finance to council and then issue that with our bond counsel.
Okay. Just one other question. What's the terms of that 6.1? Is it 20-year period or
It's
more?
20.
20? Thank you.
Interest is a 0.25%.
Yep.
Yep.
Mr. Jean.
Since we've changed out a lot of the meters, how many meters, service lines would that entail under the 6.1? Do we have a number for that? And the number of expected service lines on the private side, I'm guessing that's around 2,500 to 3,000.
1,800? 1,900?
1,900 total lead service line replacements. And then, I don't know, Scott, what is proposed for meter replacement?
No,
It'll
and I
include-
didn't mean meter.
Oh, okay.
I just was service line
Service lines, about 1,900 to 2,000 is what's proposed.
on both sides.
Correct. Yep.
But if we've changed out a lot of our service lines
Mean on our side.
on our side.
Yeah, we're, in the census tracts that we're working on, there's quite a few on our side that haven't been replaced.
In
Those are
those
the ones-
areas.
In those
Those
areas,
areas. I
yep,
see.
the older areas. Those are the ones we're focusing on.
Okay.
Yep, for 25.
And maybe another point, we've been replacing the service lines, the public service lines, and those costs been covered by ratepayers up to this point, too. Is that fair?
Correct, during our street reconstruction projects?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where the majority of them have been replaced. And then as we get leaks and otherwise, the utility has been, has some money budgeted on an annual basis to replace our side as needed.
But for the streets, when we reconstruct, the
Yes.
utility pays that
That's
portion
correct.
of the, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes. Nothing.
Mr. Robinson.
So as I understand it, the issue before the Finance Committee and the council is how do we allocate the 6.1 million in terms of funding source? And is it a revenue bond directly associated with the fees? Is it a general obligation bond backed by the full faith and credit of the city? And is it funded through the tax increment financing within the various tax incremental
Correct.
districts? And that's ultimately, I think the criticism has been that the city is under-reporting in the media, in those articles, that it's been under-reporting its total general obligation debt, and I think that's what the Finance Committee and the council are trying to reconcile going forward. But would we have the ability going forward beyond this year into future years to have more of the principal forgiveness any of it to go on the public side?
No, only what they
Only the
allocate. Yep.
Okay.
This year, for 25, I believe it was just over $1 million of principal forgiveness that DNR allocated. The rest of the principal forgiveness was all private, has to be paid on the
Yeah.
private, yeah.
So to answer your question, Mr. Robinson, we have invited Quarles and Brady, our bond counsel, to be here. We're going to take them to the council meeting to give a presentation, because council wants to understand as well what portion and how they're allocated, because interestingly enough, that 6.2 million, it potentially could be GEO, it could be utility or revenue bond. And if it's classified one over the other, it depends on whether or not it counts toward our debt. And they'll be able to explain that. And as our understanding of how that's calculated, we're currently doing that correctly, and they will be here to give us more information on that. So then we can make more informed decisions moving forward on where we put, which buckets we put these into. And we're confident that that we'll be able to work through that. Yes, sir.
As I understand it too, if we were to go to market with those bonds, it would have different ramifications relative to the classification in terms of the rate we would pay. But because we're locked in at that 0.25%, it is more of a, how does this apply against our total general obligation limit for the community? But there's no material difference between the classification of a revenue bond versus a general obligation bond for this purpose outside of the statutory cap.
Correct. So how they're calculated toward the debt total.
Right.
So it's essentially the same money. It's under how they're being obligated, and they'll be here as the experts, as bond counsel, and performing their duty as bond counsel to inform us that. So look forward to that. That'll clear up some of the questions, and I don't think it's fair to respond to everything that's out there on the internet. So we'll get it from our bond counsel in the appropriate format. Anything else on that? Eric, good to go?
I think
All
so,
right.
yeah.
Next item is item 3, discussion and possible action approving sole source request and associated budget modification for the contract with Astera to perform leak detection, satellite imagery, and leak detection. And I believe, Scott, you're going to take us through this one, or
I can
Eric?
walk us
That
through this.
contract is in there. We have the bid, and I think the staff recommendation would be to give this a whirl. They're the only ones out there doing this kind of work.
This outfit is, yeah, the only ones that are doing it. Other municipalities in Wisconsin have been doing it for a few years. They've been very happy with it. It's created with them some efficiencies on detecting leaks and where they focus their time. And this was brought last month, but I didn't have the proposals from Astera. So you see the cost right now, and also there are associated costs and savings because Schofield, Rib Mountain, and Weston also have their own contract with Astera right now, and they're walking through the approval process on their end. It's not 100% sure if they're going to all, budget for this or not, but for us, I think with the size of our system and being able to focus in on certain areas rather than the entire system, I think this would be very beneficial for us with such a large system.
Mr. Robinson.
So Eric, the area of interest would be the entire service area, the way it looks like? for
Yeah,
this
so that
purpose?
they would, yeah, the entire service area, including Weston, Rib Mountain, and Schofield at this point, right? So, and that's what they would use with the satellites to take that imagery, and then from there, then they would analyze the data and determine which areas to focus on where they see potential leaks.
Is this it's confused, I was confused as to whether it's a 1-year or a 2-year contract.
This would be a 2-year.
So a total of 82,000.
Correct. So it would be about half the first year, half the second year. Yeah.
And then the question that I have is relative to the data at termination. In so much as we're providing a good amount of the base level, what sort of work product and time commitment is there associated with us with providing all the GIS information relative to the current lines and other things? Is that a significant workload, or do we have that information?
It is not. We do have that information. We can provide them. Dan up at GIS, Dan Kerntop, he said it would probably be maybe an hour for him to put that information together and provide them the line data.
Then I have a question relative to that, at the end of the contract. It looks like at the end of the contract, basically, the contract ends and our access to that information ends. We will have the ability to import all of the information that they've collected during the terms of the contract
Yeah,
and have it available for us post-contract?
yes. Yeah, we'll have it in our system, yes. Yep, yep.
Mr. Robinson.
Well, I would move to approve the sole source contract.
Okay, I have a motion to approve, second from Gene. Further comments, questions? Mr. Gene.
This isn't totally germane to this, but I found out or heard that there was a derailment of the railroad on the way out to the industrial park. Did that have any impact on that water main that was on the south side of the tracks? Are you aware of that?
We're not aware of that, but that's good information, Joe.
It was marked. I walked it, and when they went in there to remove it, they had to build a road on the south side of the tracks, but we had marked it, but you wouldn't necessarily know for what.
Yeah, and staff would have marked it, and I'm not sure that we followed up on that.
Okay, very good.
Mr. Force.
Eric, had a question about the history of this this type of operation. Have we done a leak detection survey in the past? Seems like we have.
We have, and so, do you want to explain what our contract is currently, Scott?
Every other year, we have a 6-year contract every other year with a company that does, listens to our hydrants. So they listen to every hydrant in the city. One time, generally it takes them a week to run through that. I think we're paying a little over $9,500 right now for that week. So every other year, it's $9,500 for that survey. This is a little bit more than that, but this is new technology. Right now, with our water loss being high, I think it'd be worth trying this just to see where we stand, if we have any major leaks, or if we want to go back to what we've been doing. I currently don't believe we have major leaks out there, but right now, as I say that, this morning, we're chasing one that's probably about 2,500 gallons a minute throughout the city. It's on the low pressure zone, and we aren't able to find it right now. It hasn't surfaced, so we have staff out looking for that as we speak.
So this approach, the satellite approach, you think will be a big improvement over listening to hydrants?
I think it's worth the effort to try it.
So, and with 17% shortfall last year, I mean, we can't necessarily pin it 100% on meters. So I think there's some value to this. Mr. Robinson. Good? Anything else? All right, with motion and a second. Where was I? Okay, to approving the sole source request for the leak detection. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Item 4, update on operating and capital borrowing financials for the water and sewer utility. We kind of strayed into the capital borrowing piece of that, which we've pushed down the road just a little bit, but Mary Ann's here to help us understand that new report.
Thanks. So, yep, you have a separate report for the month of November for the water and sewer utility. As requested, we've added the prior year actuals, and, I think that was a great idea because it does give you an idea of where we are trending, and particularly with the '24 budget when we had new facilities as well as new software. I think you can see that the budgeting wasn't always as maybe accurate, and it didn't provide a good picture of where we're spending today. But when you look at the prior year actuals and the current year actuals, you can see that in many cases, we are trending almost identically to last year. Certain areas, we are seeing, if we look maybe at the water utility first, Obviously, our charges for public services are up compared to prior year. Last year at this time, we were at 8.4 million. This year, we're at 10.8 million. Again, that is mainly due to the rate increase, and we will come in, I would imagine, about close to budget on that. Investment income is similar to last year. The state grants and the proceeds from debt are both reflecting the activity this year for the various projects that we have going on, primarily the GAC project, but some of our street projects as well. On the expense side, the main area that you see some fluctuations are in professional services, again, reflective of engineering work related to projects. And in our debt redemption, this year, we are reflecting the payoff of that interim financing of 17 million to People's State Bank. That, we borrowed the money up front, which was for the GAC project. The state process, we draw the funds, so we didn't replace that with another 17 million. If you remember, we were able to, those project costs came in under our preliminary estimates, so we had to borrow less. There was a major component in the grant versus our loan forgiveness, I guess, versus loan, so that is why there's a difference there. And then capital outlay, showing the increase in the capital projects this year. So I think from the water utility, not seeing huge changes from the prior year, except for those areas. Oh, one other item, payment in lieu of tax last year. In November, our council had made the determination of what they were going to allocate or forgive. This year, that approval didn't happen till December, so you'll see the transaction in the month of December. From a sewer perspective, very similar. We're seeing a little dip in public charges for services, just a small one. And again, the proceeds from long-term debt reflects the projects that were taking place on the sewer side. Last year compared to this year, we do have some projects coming up, but they just didn't start in 2024 or as early in 2024 as we thought. The major one being the screening and some of the lift stations. So those aren't starting yet, so that's why the reduction in proceeds. From an expense side, we are seeing a little bit higher expenses in salaries. Utility services are down a bit, not a lot of big changes. Chemicals are down, and that could be a matter of timing as well, because we're expensing it when we're purchasing it. And then capital outlay, very similar to last year. So you can see that even with the capital acquisition, our loss is just a tiny loss, even though we didn't really rely on the debt proceeds to fund those. So right now, we're focusing on getting the month of December closed for multiple reasons. One of them is we do have some loan closings coming up with clean water and safe drinking water in the first quarter of 2025, and they require some financial information, as well as we know we've committed to continuing to look at, number one, I think our number one priority for the water utility is how we're going to continue funding these lead service line replacement initiatives. And so we want to be able to look at our revenues and see, if you remember, the PSC allows, obviously, for the water utility to absorb the cost of the city's side of that activity, but not the resident side. 2025, we'll be relying on grants from the state feds to accomplish that, but we want to make sure that the water utility can afford its share of those programs. So we're focusing on getting that data to Ellers, our financial advisors, so they can evaluate how that fits within the rate structure today. So those are our two primary focuses, and of course, just wrapping up year end in general.
Thank you. Questions for Finance Director? Mr. Force?
Mary Ann, I assume on the sewer utility fund, that's current year to date,
Yes.
the TDs are not there.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. I just.
All right, anything further?
Would that be cross your i's, dot your t's, and add your d's?
And your Ds. Well, we've been fortunate with that grant piece.
Yes.
You know, but scaling this up, it's clearly, we're going to have to figure out how to handle it in 3 or 4 or 5 years. So it's a big project.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Item 5, discussion and possible action approving budget modification for replacement of the water main under the railroad bridge at Grand and Thomas. There's a picture showing the condition, or at least showing the exterior of that existing line, which is exposed under the bridge, and it has a band clamp on it, stopping a leak right now. So it's something that we're going to want to address. And Scott, did you get some pricing on that?
I haven't gotten anything from our engineers yet. It was a ballpark of right around $80,000 to $90,000 from a budget standpoint, but they haven't written up specifics on that for me yet. So they did go out and take a look at it, I think, on Friday. I think one of the things we were worried about is if we had to dig back beyond the abutments of the bridge. And it doesn't look like we have to do that now because it's cast iron pipe actually that comes out from the bridge abutment. So we would just replace the pipe that's hanging under the bridge at this point and tie back into the cast iron.
Mr. Jean?
Is that C900 on there now?
It is a PVC, not quite C900. That was a little earlier version than the C900. Oddly enough, 30 years ago, I wrapped that with UV, with the UV tape that you can see on the pictures.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So it has spent some time up there, and it did serve some life. Some of the issue is that there's no expansion joint on that pipe. Same thing with underneath the Scott Street Bridge. It's the same kind of pipe that's underneath that. It doesn't get the UV, so it doesn't get brittle, but it still gets that snake-like expansion where it expands and contracts, when we get warm and cold. So there's going to be some work that needs to be done under our bridges in the next few years.
Mr. Jean?
Sorry, I didn't remember doing this one on Grand, but the more I think about it, I know we did it. But the one I wanted to make sure you understood, Scott Street had, I didn't know it was similar pipe, but it's probably not exposed to the sun like this one was. Do you have an idea will it be steel pipe or what will we put in?
The intent would be to put just HDPE in the place of this pipe here. I believe Grand Ave is scheduled to be reconstructed in the next 10 years or so. So hopefully that HDPE would last until we can redo that whole piping configuration there. That's a state bridge, so we wouldn't be able to just go in on the approaches. We'd have to take out the entire approach and replace the entire approach, which would drive across on the project.
Yes, sir.
One other question, will it be our intent to replace the pipe throughout Grand Avenue under that project?
Eventually, yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
One other note, we'd actually propose to replace this with 8-inch pipe because that's what we would propose to replace in the future. We typically don't use 6-inch pipe for main line anymore. 8 is the minimum.
So 8, will that hang on that same set of hangers?
No, we would need to replace the hangers as well.
Yeah, that's why we would be looking at putting 6-inch for the temporary. That would keep our velocities up as well, because that pipe is not insulated, so I believe there's enough velocity there in the pipe that keeps it from freezing. If we upsize our pipe, we might slow the water down to a point where we might have issues there as well. So we'll just keep it the same, put new pipe in, and then work on a full replacement in the 10-year time span.
Okay, so what is our action here? Did you have something, Mr. Robinson?
I was just going to ask, how are we paying for it, or what fund is it coming out of?
It's going to have to come out of our capital budget, and so we might have to defer some projects, but unless, as we get into the year, we find out we have additional revenue coming in where we can afford it, which is actually why this is here, because it's a project that we didn't anticipate, then would like approval to move this forward.
So this is an internal utility budget modification, and we don't have exact numbers. Do we need some guidelines, or can we entertain a motion to,
Well, I'd like to get a budget of about 90,000 if that's possible. If it comes in over that for any reason, then I would bring it back. But if we're just replacing it with PE pipe and now we don't have to go into the abutments, I anticipate it less than that. But, we're going to have expansion joints on each side, and there's going to have to set up contractors underneath hanging and new brackets to hang the pipe and stuff like that. So, yeah.
Mr. Jean?
Also move to approve this work. It's a project and to take it out of reallocating some of the other capital projects for the 90,000.
Okay, motion from Jean for up to 90,000. Second from Robinson. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thanks. Just one note, I will likely anticipate bringing their capital improvement plan back in March for any adjustments that we need, because we should have some good estimates too and bids on our projects for 2025. And so we should be able to update that and then bring that back to you.
All right, looks like a good patch job up there, so get us through the spring. All right, item 6, discussion and possible action approving Amendment 1 to the Master Partnership Agreement with Community Infrastructure Partners. That amendment was placed in the packet. And this would, go ahead.
The amendment and the original agreement are placed in the packet. That agreement was signed by both and approved by both Wausau Waterworks Commission as well as the City Council. So that's why this is coming back. It's an amendment to that agreement. The reason for the amendment was to be in, to really match the DNR had an issue with how the agreement was written on a cost plus fixed base, or cost plus contract. This is more of a fixed price not to exceed contract. Funding hasn't changed. Costs to CIP have not changed. Just the wording in the contract. The KPIs were removed. CIP is still held to those KPIs. They have a workforce development plan that's in draft form right now. And so this will go to Finance Committee next week and then on to Council January 28th.
So looking for a motion to approve that amendment. Is that a motion from Mr. Jean?
I'm moving to approve the
Okay,
amendment.
and a second from Alder Watson. Comments, questions, Mr. Force?
Yeah, this question doesn't relate specifically to this agreement that we're looking at, but to the program in general. One of the discussion points that I recall when we were negotiating with CIP to embark on this venture, which is a different business model than we're all used to, was comments by them that they might be able to access other sources of funding. That was appealing to me, although I wasn't sure what sources they were looking at. Has there been any activity in that area, or is that simply a dead end?
I would definitely say it's not a dead end. They have applied for other funding sources, one being actually a HUD grant, which the city was in question on whether they were going to take. They did end up accepting that. We are working with community development, trying to see, because that was actually for, finding lead within the city, within homes and doing the inspections. And so part of that funding was to help with, to cover the cost of the inspections in the home for the lead service lines as well. And so we haven't tapped any of that funding. I'm with community development, I'm not exactly sure where that project is at this point. And then that's also a partnership with the county too, I know. They've been helping us out. We'll be requesting money through CDBG as well, through the program with the city on some infrastructure, and that might be ongoing as well. And then they just, as far as just ongoing, as they continue to look for other potential funding sources, whether it's from private, they've looked at, I think it was Johnson & Johnson, and there was another large company as well, if they would be willing to at least pay for some of the filters, the pitchers, things like that, that we have to hand out. None of that's come to fruition yet, for those.
Okay, anyone else? Seeing nothing further, all those in favor of accepting the amendment, we'll be passing this on to council, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Item 7, discussion and possible action on leachate acceptance pilot project. And Ben has an update for us.
Certainly. I hope that everybody had a chance to review my memo that I had submitted. In the memo, I provided a background of all the discussions that have taken place with the Marathon County landfill and their engineering firm, Tetra Tech. We've been in collaboration with the landfill to figure out a path moving forward and a schedule for leachate acceptance. All parties involved basically thought it would be a great idea to have the DNR involved with this decision and to have them provide comment and seek some solution or strategies moving forward as far as implications or any punitive damages that the city would incur if we accepted it. During this meeting, which was on December 11th, 2024, between the city, DNR, landfill, and Tetra Tech, the conclusion from this meeting was that the DNR wasn't ready to offer us any solutions to accepting the PFAS or the leachate, and that if we accepted it, we were liable for meeting compliance with our discharge permit regardless. The walkaway from that was we were all a little dumbfounded that the DNR wasn't willing to offer any solutions or work with us as a team, knowing that this will be a future problem. After that discussion with the DNR, we had a follow-up meeting with the landfill and Tetra Tech. Path moving forward, it was agreed that the city would continue to work on a schedule for leachate acceptance and a schedule for PFAS testing. During the interim, I had a phone conversation with our basin engineer, Nicholas Lindstrom, where he had offered kind of an eye-opener as to how the reasonable potential and the pollutant minimization plan would work out. It was a recommendation or a suggestion made by Nick that we, due to the fact that we will be receiving our new discharge permit rather soon, sometime in June, that would be recommended holding off for leachate acceptance. And within the first 2 years of the permit, we're going to be required to do PFAS testing on our effluent. I'm not sure on the biosolids yet. I haven't seen any permits out there that have stated that, so we'll wait to see how that looks when we receive it. And the reason being is when right now, our numbers are looking good with PFAS. And if we know where we're at, we accept leachate prior to the required PFAS testing, the chances of that contamination within the plant, it'll be in the piping, it'll be in our tanks, it'll be in our digesters. I don't know if that's gonna contaminate the testing that we're gonna be having to do during the first 2 years of the permit. So the recommendation was to do the first year of testing without leachate and the second year of testing with the leachate. That way, the 2 years of the compiled data, there'll be a P99 study where they calculate limits, and then it'll define any reasonable potential to exceed those limits. And if there is a potential to exceed, the pollutant minimization plan goes into effect right away. So we have to start looking at source reduction. If we accept the leachate prior to the first year of testing, we will not know if there's any sources of PFAS from our now commercial users or industrial users, regular customers, and that would help identify that within the first year and to see if we need to take action on source reduction without the leachate first. So in my letter, I just had recommended that to the commission that we accept the recommendation, that of Nick Lindstrom, and approve the continued negotiations with the Marathon County Solid Waste after the first year of the PFAS testing. I was confident that with careful planning and collaboration, we can manage the project in a way that benefits both Wausau Waterworks and the regional community, meaning the landfill.
Thank you. Mr. Robinson.
So I had a chance to talk to Ben and Eric just briefly, and various people in the county. I would request that we defer any action on this for another month. My concern is that we've got a systemic problem. We've got PFAS in the waste stream that ends up at landfills, therefore in leachate, and it comes here. The city, the wastewater treatment plant has a problem because they get it in the effluent, that the inflow or the influent into the plant, and then it either is discharged into the river through the WPDS permit or attaches to the biosolids. And I think we need to look at this holistically. After my conversation, I put a call into some folks in the DNR. I'd like to try to set up a meeting to try to have a better discussion on the systemic approach. My concern is that if we say no to the county and the leachate, does the county say no on the handling of biosolids? Should there need to be a reason to dispose of the biosolids at the landfill? And I think we've approached this kind of holistically. I'd like to try to continue those discussions, and I'd like to try to get DNR management involved in that, because we don't have biosolid standards. We have surface water or effluent standards, but we really don't have the permits necessary to carry those out. There are minimization plans that are required if you exceed the standards in there, but I think that there are probably as many unknowns as there are knowns, and I just think it would be helpful to continue the discussion with the DNR and get a little bit better guidance. Are there opportunities for clean water funding, act funding, for either a system at the plant or at the landfill? Are there opportunities using the innovation fund to work on a joint approach with some new dollars that are available through the state? I guess I would just request that we delay this and give people a chance to talk through it a little bit more.
Mr. Forrest.
I would agree with John. We don't know much about PFAS and biosolids yet, except that so far, our biosolids operation seems to be free of that issue. I am reading, I read the environmental press pretty regularly. There is a growing concern about PFAS and biosolids, even though I think only Michigan and Maine are the two states that have taken any action. I expect there's going to be more attention to it and more actions, possibly by the state of Wisconsin at some point. So I think a cautious, measured approach here is appropriate.
And Ben, are we under any timeline?
We do have time, since we won't be receiving the issuance of the new permit till June, sometime in June.
Okay.
Is what I was made aware of. I might add that I think the state of Wisconsin is anxiously awaiting on the risk assessment release from the EPA on the biosolids and the effluent. And I think that will definitely change the outlook as far as the way the DNR is going to proceed with their PFAS rulings. So,
Okay, and without objection and without a motion and a second, I think we can put this off until February. Did anyone have any other comment on that? Mr. Jean?
I don't have a comment directly to what Ben is proposing, but where's the leachate going now from the landfill?
Good morning, everyone. Dave Hagenbusher, Director of Marathon County Solid Waste Department. Leachate right now is actually going to Plover. We send 4 loads a day to Plover and then 2 to Stevens Point. So Plover is a 1 million gallon per day plant. And to date, their numbers are looking okay, but obviously they have concerns as well going into the future. So trying to balance that out. I did want to reiterate and thank Eric and Ben. They've been very collaborative over the last 6 months. We've had numerous meetings. These two individuals are focused on finding a community solution. I think more importantly here, we're really being pressured by Wisconsin DNR to put these restrictions in place, and we're kind of all being pulled different ways. So that's been an incredible challenge there. They're kind of working in silos, so to speak, not understanding the different, possible implications that these decisions are making. Moreover, we're starting to see some public, not so much public, but state level attention. I sit on Wisconsin DNR's external advisory committee for PFAS, representing the solid waste industry, and our situation is actually being discussed quite a bit at the state level. So getting some attention there, as Robinson said, we are evaluating possible funding opportunities for some sort of pretreatment. Both Wausau and Marathon County are evaluating that. So we want to be able to continue to keep the door open for that acceptance of biosolids based on volumes. Marathon County Solid Waste does believe that we'd be able to handle the volumes that are produced by the treatment plant. So that's, once again, if we have a relationship there, we want to be able to continue to keep that. Lastly, the situation with not being able to send it for a year. Obviously we are trying to cut costs on our leachate hauling. We think that there may be opportunity, to get it into Wausau. That's why we developed the plan. If we're going to test and the DNR wants to truly know what the worst case scenario is, maybe it is taking it right now so that we can understand what is the worst case scenario. Will it put us over that limit? Will it put us over that level? So any questions, I'm happy to take.
Thank you, Dave. Actually, yeah, it's a great point. This is a intergovernmental thing. It's a community solution, and we're driven by the DNR and for entities fighting in our own silos, we might not come to the right solution. So if we've got the time to give this some more time to breathe here in the next month, I'm in favor of doing that. Appreciate it. No action taken there. Last item is, the next meeting is scheduled for the 4th, 11 o'clock right here. Would entertain a motion to, did you have something? Entertain a motion to adjourn? Mr. Jean, Mr. Robinson, all in favor?
Aye.
See you later. Thank you.